Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. True testimonies of breakthrough. This platform was created to help you find those powers within you to break the chains that have been holding you back in your life. I love to dive into a powerful question right off the bat. We have the amazing Kathy Motlagh with us today. And Kathy, my question for you as we start this episode, you hear the word authenticity thrown around a lot in society, in business, and entrepreneurship, but what is real and true authenticity?
Thank you, Rob. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because, as you know, it's my passion. Authenticity, you're absolutely correct in that it's tossed around a lot, particularly in leadership circuits. And so, it's important to distinguish what we mean by power of authenticity. Most people's definition of authenticity really comes from exterior forces. Who are your parents? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What do you do for a living? What is your personality and how do you show up? So most people think, well, I'm authentic. I'm very authentic. And they're correct. They are. However, there is immense power within every single person listening to us right now and everyone on this planet that is called consciousness, our consciousness, and which is the power and the force behind all that is. And we have access to this power. And once we truly identify, acknowledge, and understand and learn to recruit it to our advantage, then this kind of an elevated sense of self-awareness and authenticity, which we call authentic power, which is a place of confidence, it's a place of integrity, and it's a place of courage. So that's what we mean by authenticity. So an authentic leader is bold, not afraid to be the first one to do something. It's very innovative, is always ahead of the game, is always ahead. I mean, they're the people who you're like, what are they doing? What's that mad? What's their secret? Their secret is that they have tapped into this power.
Okay. So as we continue on, I have a bunch of questions to ask you already, but I just want to introduce everybody to the podcast. I hope you find breakthrough in this episode. As with every other episode of the Unstuck movement, we're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Under Kathy's stewardship, ThinkVirtues, which you can check out thinkvirtues.com, has transformed into a platform for profound change in the world. Her Power of Authenticity program revolutionizes personal and professional development by unlocking our hidden potential. So, Kathy, I want to thank you for the work that you do and for being here today. What are some of the other characteristics of somebody who operates under authentic power? You mentioned boldness. What else is there?
Well, they also they know what their zone of genius is. And that's critical because each one of us has at least one. And they're really attuned to that. They're very clear about it and they lead intentionally. So they have that ability and that in itself is immense. They're usually quite influential because when someone operates from a level of high integrity, with a level of purpose and intention, they're very clear about what they want and very clear about how they treat others. So it's really important that's a very important quality. So they're just on a different level of leadership. They're not consumed by themselves alone. They have a vision that includes bringing everyone along. So it's not a self-focused type of a leader. It's a leader who is really concerned about the entire organization, for example, the entire team. It's not just self-focused about talking about my ideas. And so when a leader shows up that way, then really they influence everyone else to operate from that same level. After all, we all want to do things that matter. We all want to live a life of meaning besides our career, leadership, etc. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. So as someone who yourself, who's able to identify authenticity, who are some of those leaders that stand out to you right now in our world? People that you see as like, wow, that is a truly authentic leader who's operating with authentic power.
One of the people that I can talk about, which I know everybody will be able to relate to outside of what you think. We're not a political company. We don't take a political stance. But this is an election year. People kind of have their antennas up, and I think that this is a good example. Regardless of what you think of this person, because I know he's quite controversial, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a person of true authenticity, courage, and integrity. So he operates on that level. And as you can see, despite being an independent candidate, he's really creating quite a movement. There's a lot of people who love and follow him, and he's been able to really do something that other independent candidates haven't been able to do in the past. As far as leadership is concerned, most leaders in leadership positions in this country operate not at a level. They're somewhere between. They're really into pride, a little under pride as far as the consciousness map is concerned, between anger and pride at 160. So they are, but that's good news, because when they're at that level, once they're aware of the power that they have within them, that authentic power, they ascend quite quickly and elevate to their courage, integrity, and confidence, true confidence and authenticity, which is beautiful to see. And that's what I live for. And that's what we create in the Power of Authenticity workshop.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our society today, is to find great leaders. Whenever I'm doing workshops, I'll do a leadership lab workshops, and one of the opening questions is to ask people, who do they see as a great leader in their life, whether it's somebody on social media or TV, or somebody they know personally, or somebody from history. They have a hard time pointing to, like, who are the leaders that they look to as those figureheads who have made that incredible impact on them, that they could actually point to them as leaders. And I find that surprising, because, well, I don't find it surprising, number one, because I grew up most of my life never really knowing truly what a leader was, and anybody who was a leader in my life was not the greatest example of leadership. And that's to nobody's fault. It's just when I understood what actual leadership was, I was like, oh, wow, there's not many people that I could point to, until I started paying attention. And now that I'm paying attention, you see leaders, they stand out to you because, like you said, because of their boldness, because of their operating from their zone of genius, right? And they're not living from a place of pride. They're living from a place of moving forward with a powerful vision, and they're bringing everybody else along with them. And I find it fascinating that it's such a hard thing for us to identify great leadership, because our society is so starved of great leadership.
Absolutely.
How has this become your journey in your own personal life to lead you to this place of helping people find their true authenticity?
Well, I had to walk the path myself. I lost my sense of identity, first of all, from a very young age, and made all kinds of mistakes and bad choices. And coming to a place where I really realized by every sense of the word, I was incredibly successful, was making a lot of money, had elevated to the highest levels of success that I could see myself in my career. However, I was everything else in my life just wasn't working. So that is a humbling experience. And coming across Dr. Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, in year 2000, sent me on a journey of self-actualization and self-discovery. And I've spent the last 24 years researching and coming up with frameworks and tools and products that kind of reverse engineering my own journey. And ironically, it worked on the very, very first person I tried this method on. And it was it was quite powerful. So it was really me going through the same process myself, where I wasn't in my authentic power, and acknowledging that, realizing that, and doing the inner work that I needed to do to get to where I am today and where I became in 2014, was a powerful journey. It was a big difference in the way I existed, the way I operated, the way I came up with ideas, the way that I executed, the way that, the way I performed. Everything changed. So, and that's exactly what happens to the people who go through the journey themselves. It's not the dark night of the soul, by the way. It's the dark night of the ego.
And that ego does not like to be messed with.
The ego just does not that. I mean, we need ego in this realm of existence. We just want it to be in service to us versus us being in service to it, which is that's the trick.
Yeah. You mentioned Dr. Hawkins. So Dr. David Hawkins, if you do not know who he is, the best place to start is the book Power versus Force. This might be the easiest book to start with, and that you get a full scope of what he's all about, which is very profound. And it seems like people are led to him, not so much him promoted to the world, right? It's like you end up finding yourself getting involved in his work. I love to talk practically too. Like, how practically did things change for you as you started to get involved in his work?
Well, there was a level of awareness that changed immediately. Just reading his words, he has such he passed away in 2012. He had such an immense command on the topic of consciousness because he researched it for multiple decades. So he speaks to it in such a way that when you read it, first of all, when you're attracted to the book itself is a sign that you're ready for the journey. If you are curious about the notion of what is it like to operate from a level of power versus force, which means that, you're forcing things to happen. One area of your life is working at the expense of another. If you're tired of that game and you really want to see what is this thing called consciousness and this faculty that has been kind of outside of my awareness my entire life. So when you start to read the book, there's this immense sense of, wow, holy cow. I have access to that. I can do anything. I can have anything, quite literally. I mean, you hear that from people, from your mentors, from coaches. I've been coached since my mother bought me my very first coaching program right out of college. And I've had incredible coaches my entire adult life, and mentors. And so I've heard that before. But when you really read the words and understand, wow, there's this other level of beingness that we have access to. And so everything changes. Your outlook, your perception changes, because we live in such a way that we are anchored to our past. We have limited vision, and we really don't have any control over our ego or circumstances, and are kind of confused about our identity. I think most people live in a false sense of identity. So those were the first 4 things that were eye-opening experiences for me. So all of a sudden, I started to notice, to see outside of things. So I started to gain perspective, to be able to see things on a grander level. So I became more aware, more considerate, more thoughtful, less concerned about what I wanted, more concerned about what needed to get done, what needed to happen, how I was going to create impact in my own zone of genius, becoming clear about what my zone of genius is, because I'm an artist. I went to the School of the Art Institute. So as an artist, I'm creative, but what is that area of creativity that I want to express myself in that is going to create impact and change? So those are, and of course the ego, the ego who's always criticizing, complaining, making us consuming, and also just being in a place of, victimhood. those kinds of things, so really it was a different level of an elevated level of being human.
The ego gets misconstrued a lot. It means many different things to many different people. And I just, when you start to understand it, it's much more clear that the ego is always running. You can't get rid of the ego. It's a necessary part of living in the world that we live in, right? The ego is part of the journey. And like you said, it's the same way with social media, right? To use it and not let it use you. Use your ego and not let it use you. So what does the ego mean to you, and what does it look like to manage it properly?
Well, ego, Dr. Hawkins puts it beautifully. And when you have such a incredible person explaining ego in the way that he does, there's really no other source to go to. The way he explained it is ego is an energy field. So really separating ourselves from ego. So it's the ego, not my ego. So ego is here for a purpose, to keep us alive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's constantly in survival mode. But we live in a pretty friendly world. We live in a pretty safe world. We live in a pretty good world. Most people have good intentions, are good human beings. Not everybody's perfect. We all make mistakes, myself included. I'm not this, once you become authentic, doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. You make plenty of mistakes still, but who you are in the face of those mistakes is completely different. You operate from a level of power versus force. So ego, the way to identify what ego is first of all, ego, it loves to control. So if it doesn't have control over a situation, it doesn't feel good. It separates you from me. It compares, it judges, it criticizes, not in a constructive way either, in a demeaning way. And it's really the entity within us that holds us back from our growth. It doesn't like growth because it likes to stay the same, because change is not comfortable. Change could not be safe. So it really stops us from our growth. So unless we have a healthy relationship or develop a healthy relationship with ego, with the ego, then it controls every single one of our moves and contracts us, keeps us small. So that's how I identify and explain and talk about the ego. The Power of Authenticity, the course that we teach, we spend a good amount of time, and we spend a good 1.5 to 2 hours on the ego, because and it's the area that people struggle through most, because ego is also a master of deception.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you infinite ways of self-deception. Oh, I'm not so bad. Everything's good. What do I need to change? You're doing great. You're so successful. Why do you want to change that? Why do you want to rock the boat? All kinds. Oh, don't do it now. Later. Kick the can down the road. So it has all kinds of ways of holding you back, keeping you small, and keeping you out of your potential, because your potential could be scary to ego energy.
Yeah, because things are going to change.
Yeah.
And there's unknown in the change.
There's unknown.
And ego does not like unknown, because unknown is not safe, and it's survival, right? It's the scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset. Exactly. And when we're living in scarcity, it's really hard to think outside of what that is. And it makes sense as to why. So it makes sense as to why our ego wants to hold us there, because it's like a protection mechanism, which has served us in many different ways, but in the modern world really doesn't serve us anymore at all. It's holding us back. So we're going to jump into a quick commercial break for the sponsor of the podcast. When we come back in 60 seconds, I want to find out for yourself, what was it like for you? Because I think we're tying the power of authenticity with the ego, because that's like a constant battle. What was it like for you to overcome the ego throughout this journey that you've come on? And as you did overcome it, how did you see things change in your life? I'm so excited just to find out that journey from you and some practical steps for us in our own lives. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
Kathy, I love this conversation because it's so important to have. And it can be a really deep conversation talking about the ego and talking about being authentic and being able to like break it down into simplistic ways so we can understand how do we break free of these things to become our most authentic self. When you stepped into this place of authenticity for yourself and overcame or understood how to work with your ego and not against it, how did things start to change for you?
Everything changed. Everything changed. There's a level of freedom that's experienced when you finally unhook the ego from your soul. And that level of freedom is just, that gives you you can't get pushed around. You're unshakable. No one can mess with you. No one can push you around. I mean, people who are in ego energy, particularly pride and anger, they exude that level of force. They try to make you do things that are not coherent with what it is that you're trying to do, you're trying to accomplish, and standing in your power to for the truth, which is what I care about. What most people care about. There's honesty, which is our truth, and then there's the truth, which is what we all strive for, is really to be it's the light, it's the good in the world, being the force for good. So yeah, everything changed. There's this level of freedom and wellness, extraordinary energy. Like I can work from 3 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. And when I'm creating something without getting tired, without, you're in flow energy. There's ways of recruiting these things, temporarily. There's ways of manipulating this type of beingness, like being in flow. And there's what the work that we do is you always have access to it. You don't have to slow down the brain waves in order to get to this, to access flow. You're always in a state of flow. It's just that what are you doing? You see?
This sounds enticing to somebody, right? It sounds freeing to someone watching or listening to this right now. They're like, man, I'd really love to have that in my life. Where can they start today? Like just in their daily life, something that you can do practically that would help you to alleviate that victimhood mentality. What would you recommend?
Yeah, it's a lot. We are all raised in being in shame and guilt when we're growing up. I mean, it's not that our parents were meant to mess us up, but and we're all victims of victims. But we were all told when we did something good girl, good boy. And if we did something bad girl, bad boy. So that's what that means. The meaning making machines that we are, the meaning that we attach to that is that I'm bad. I'm a bad girl. Right? You're a bad. So that feeling is within all of us. And so, to acknowledge that that's falsehood. There's not an ounce of truth in that. We're all immensely powerful, precious, extraordinary expressions of life. Are we perfect? Do we do everything perfectly? Absolutely not. Do we make mistakes? Yes. So lean into forgiveness, and forgiveness is hard, not just yourself, but everyone without exception. That's the hard part.
That's the really hard part.
Because how do you forgive a person who's done you all kinds of wrong?
Yeah.
Right? Because we're always wanting to judge. It's not up to us to judge. Because we don't know. You don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. There's certain things that we don't know about people. So when people show up with a certain sense of beingness or some sort of an interaction, and it's unpleasant for one reason or another, there's a lot we don't know. There's the world of content, what happened, and then context, gaining, in what situation, circumstance did the content occur in. So it's context that's important. So when we understand, I've also done research in neuroscience, psychology, psychiatry, and affective psychology. And when you look at research, you understand that less than 50%, and depending on whose research you look at, 30% of what we remember is even true.
Mm-hmm.
So what we remember from our past, chances are it didn't even happen that way. Okay, so as long as we're making stuff up, why don't we give everybody, including ourselves, a break? Give grace, forgive, extend love, be kind, be compassionate, be caring, instead of what ego likes to do: judge, criticize, complain, victimize. These are all disempowering positions. Ego loves to take a position, the positionality of, I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, I'm right, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Such and such person is this, so they suck. It's like, so there's a place of, another thing that accompanies authenticity is that unshakable confidence that only comes from a place of humility. Being humble. Dr. Hawkins is famous for saying, if you ever listen to his lectures, he says, or any of his interviews, he says, me, myself, I know nothing. This is a guy that has an MD, a psychiatrist, PhD, and studied consciousness for multiple decades. He had a clinic in New York that had 2,000 outpatients, 1,000 inpatients every day. And his level of humility is that I know nothing. And it's true. The more you learn, the more you understand how little you know. And I feel the same way. And so, when you approach the world that way, then you really have to be kind and forgiving and understanding, but it's difficult, until you get up to reason on the map of consciousness. People can't really truly understand either. Understanding is a higher self faculty. So ThinkVirtues, the name of our company, means operating from a higher self, from a higher mind. So that's where I would start, is really giving yourself and everyone else a break. Don't be so righteous. Don't be so judgmental. Don't be so, just approach the world with kindness, with an open-heartedness. We call it be heartful.
Be heartful, not hurtful.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that too, it's because sometimes you hear like, don't be judging people. Well, good freaking luck not judging somebody. At least that's my experience. It's like, because I'll catch myself doing the things I don't want. I always think of what Paul wrote and in the Bible. I don't know if it was Romans or where it was. I can never remember which parts things were in, but basically, like, I find myself wanting to do good and not doing good. I find myself wanting to be a certain kind of person and falling short on a consistent basis. So that's where that humility comes from. Of like, man, I really want to do this. But it's really, really hard to be the person that I set out to be. We're all going through that. And so, and so for me, a practical way that's been very helpful is like, as I catch myself ridiculing myself or ridiculing somebody else or a situation, instead of, because what I would do, like if I was judging somebody, then I'll be like, I shouldn't be judging them. And then I'll judge me for judging them. So now I'm like changing the judgment. It doesn't work. So I found just praying for that person in that moment, in the situation, just like saying a prayer for them, being like, I bless that person. I don't know what they're going through, but God, I pray you just love on them and show them, whatever it is they need to realize, or let your will be done, because like you said, there is so much we don't know. There's so much we can't know. So what can I do? It makes you feel kind of hopeless in a way. Like, if I can't figure this stuff out, what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to bless people. That's what we have the power to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's an extraordinary point, and I agree. Pray for them, see them healthy, see them well, and understand that everybody's on their own journey. This work is our work is spiritual indeed. It's not religious, it's spiritual. We really focus on nurturing our spirit in a way that empowers us. And I think that if you don't have access to, if you're listening to this and you don't have the resources to hire a coach, because I think that for every leader who's leading others, everybody needs a coach, because we all have blind spots. We all need, there's no reason for you to sit in suffering for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 10 months, a year, decades for some people. We talk to people come into our circle, they haven't talked to their parents in 10 years. Why? Because there's this disagreement and they don't know how to walk back to them. They've lost the way, the connection. They haven't talked to their best friends, sisters, siblings. I mean, my God, children. So it's really sad. There's no reason for people to suffer. If you have resources, hire a coach who gets it, who understands this dynamic, who understands consciousness for real, because this is not an area that coaches focus on so much in terms of understanding what consciousness is, researching it, and knowing it thoroughly well enough to teach it. And if you don't have those resources, I think your advice is really on point. That you want to pray a lot. You want to really see good things happen for people, including yourself. Understand that at the end of the day, we're all human. We all make mistakes, and we all deserve to be forgiven. Don't reduce. Do not a good way to frame forgiveness is, don't reduce yourself or others to one act. We contemplate 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day. We make 35,000 decisions in a day. So don't reduce people to just one or two things, or maybe a handful of things they did wrong, including yourself. You did a ton of things correctly.
Yeah.
So acknowledge your goodness, understand that you mean well, and not to make excuses. I mean, I don't mean to discount accountability. Because when you walk into this power, you're accountable. No one needs to motivate you. That's the power of this work, is that you're inspired from within, because that light that you lost is turned back on, and you don't need anybody to tell you, go, Rob, let's go. You already have that inspiration within you, because motivation, there's a difference between motivation, which is external, and intrinsic types of things. That's inspiration that comes from within. So you want people to operate from that level, and that only comes from training. And fortunately, our work is, Power of Authenticity intensive, which we have actually a track coming up in July 11th and 12th, is affordable. It's not cheap, but it's not, it's really absolutely worth every penny that you invest, because there's nothing more important than this work to me.
No, there's not. And hearing what you're saying, right? Who would not want to live from a place of intrinsic internal empowerment? Like, who would not want to live from a place of like, I no longer seek motivation, energy, whatever the things are that are driving me. I'd love to just have them within me, because then, which is truly who we are. Like, we have everything we already need, and we possess those things. We just don't know how to unlock them and
Yeah.
society points us in all of the, well, society and consumerism, right, points us in a way we must consume these things to feel better. And that's
Mhm.
a never ending journey. That's the ego's journey, right? A never ending journey of consumption. I'm curious for yourself and for others. You went from this place when you were younger of being very successful, but not being on this path of authenticity and understanding consciousness and understanding that there's so much more to gain than just the monetary success things in life. Now, if you swing that the whole way to the other side, you can end up like Dr. David Hawkins living in the woods by himself for like 10 years, right? Only eating like an apple a day and totally disconnected from society. So there's like a pendulum swing there to find yourself back in the middle. How do you, and this is a big question, but I'm curious what your answer is. How do you walk this out in the daily walk of life, right? Because you don't want to be disconnected from the world. I think we're supposed to be in this world making a difference, not totally checked out from it. So how do you find that balance?
Well, you don't have to go away. You don't have to go to the Himalayas or to a cave or a forest to accomplish this work. It's just a level of awareness. And that's what the power of authenticity, which is delivered in a plethora of ways. One of them is this 2-day intensive that's coming up in July. We have we do one-on-one with leaders, with the CEOs who hire us. I do the work with them one-on-one, and it takes a year to walk through the steps and the path to find themselves and really put ego where it needs to go and operate from that level. So it's not that you need to go away. You do not need to. It's really it's a level of keen awareness of who you are, how you relate to divine energy, and how you can harness your power to create the life that you want. Now, the leaders that operate under courage, under the map of consciousness, if you look at it, courage is at 200. Listening, the people, the leaders who are below that will think things like, well, what if my team members what if we do this work with our team members and they decide to, go crazy, go wacky because they don't understand.
Yeah.
Or they have all kinds of ideas. I mean, the objections that they come up with around this area is fascinating to me. I'm like, wow, really? You think that's what's going to happen? No. Well, what happens is when you come into your authentic power, is, first of all, not everybody wants the same thing. Everybody has a different idea and different place in society and in their journey. So what ends up happening is coherence. What ends up happening is unstoppable teams. What happens is they're innovative, collaborative, they're engaged. Because people are disengaged because they've lost their sense of purpose. They find their sense of purpose. And when we align a personal set of our why. Everyone has a personal why, and we have a collaborative why when we're in organizations. Why are we doing what we want to do? What we're doing from a place where it's really more than just about us. A higher meaning, a servant's heart, wanting to really add value to others. So that's what's going to happen. That's what happens with everybody. It's just that depending on where they are in the structure of an organization, on a team, in a small company, whatever, they become really productive. An average employee works less than 3 hours of the 8 hours they're paid.
Mm-hmm.
They're not innovative. They're competitive amongst themselves. So it's my idea. So if they have a good idea, they don't share it. If they notice something that went wrong, they don't really talk about it because, it's everybody's afraid. And when you have an organization that's operating from a level of fear, which shows up anxiety, stress, overwhelm. Anxiety, stress, overwhelm is all fear energy. So when you have people at that level, which is who doesn't have an organization where people don't say they have so much stress, so much anxiety. So when you have that, then you really are using less than 1/10, 10% at best of each employee's performance. So
Yeah.
when we're going into an organization, put everybody through just a 2-day power of authenticity, 2 half-day, their production doubles.
Mm-hmm. That's
Their
incredible.
their performance doubles, their attitudes align. Now, there are some exceptions. Some people will need to be, some people need to go. And those people are the ones who are causing problems in your organization anyway. They're not aligned. They'll be better off in another job. So you really identify the good apples from the bad.
Mm.
Or I don't like to call it bad, but just it's a misalignment. They don't belong where they are at. They're there for a paycheck. And what they're doing is they're costing you time and money.
Yeah.
So identifying those people is critical. So that's one of the things we do. And then we align and get going. Things like communication, collaboration, engagement are not external things that you can manipulate or learn techniques and tactics around. Although you can do that and it does work temporarily. But we recalibrate. We go back to our old selves very quickly
Yeah.
if we don't understand our consciousness and the dynamics. Are you with me?
100%. It's so easy to slip back, even if you have the information, applying it and actually living from it.
Yeah.
And being able to recalibrate yourself is a whole different story altogether. And it's just so easy to slip back. And it's kind of just how, that's just how most things go, is we take a few steps forward, fall back a little bit, right? And slowly grow over time. And that's what I love about what you're doing with your work and what Dr. David Hawkins has done, is like, this is permanent change that not only changes you, but it changes everybody around you.
Exactly.
It changes everything.
It changes
And
everything.
the higher you level up on the level of consciousness, the more impact you have on the world itself. Like the ripples that come out from you are exponential. You can't even understand how big those effects are. So this is the life's work that we all should be doing, because this life's work is everything. Like if the point is to help other people, to serve other people, and to be a better service, then the only way to be a better service is to be more selfless, more humble, and more freely able to connect with others, because you're not in scarcity. You're not thinking they're going to steal from me, they're going to take from me. If I give to them, I won't get back, that sort of thing. Exactly. And so it's powerful. It's so powerful, Kathy. So I love that you're doing this work. I love the fact that you work with businesses and organizations, but also with families and children.
Yes.
Because that is so huge for a kid to understand that. And for a family to understand that.
It's a game changer. Suicide is the #1 cause of death in kids, 10 to 24 right now.
Wow.
There's no reason for that. And the reason is that kids, really, the younger generation is really higher consciousness. They don't like the world we live in. They don't like the world we've built. And as their parents, it's our responsibility to really course correct. It's to acknowledge, we've made mistakes. Maybe not you personally, maybe not me personally, maybe yes, me personally,
Oh, I've made some mistakes.
Yeah, we all, I think that, it's not a blame game. In other words, it's a acknowledging there's work to be done. We're all in this together. And when we raise the tide, all of the ships rise.
Yeah.
And that's the point that we all need to understand. Most importantly, our kids are suffering for no reason. They really need to have access to these tools, access to their consciousness, access to forgiveness, access to love, self-love, access to self-appreciation, access to understanding their zone of genius, not just building their self-esteem to a point where they don't really believe it. They have to believe it internally. And though there are kids that can look incredibly confident, I see it all the time. Sitting across the table from a parent who just lost a child is the saddest thing I've ever experienced. It's the hardest thing any parent can experience. I'm sure it's the hardest thing anyone can experience ever. And it's good to know that there's a solution to it. And the solution is to really give this gift to your family. And that's why our program first began as a family program back in 2011. And believe it or not, the parents who were using the program kept saying, Kathy, you need to bring this into organizations because it's so powerful. But that's, if you ask most people, they tell you a lot, and even some coaches will say the same thing, that work-life balance is a myth. That's a falsehood. Balance is our nature. It's our natural state of being. Once you're at your true authentic power, you're in balance. That means that you know your priorities and you really value relationships, and no one can veer you from it. It doesn't mean that you don't work. Of course you work. You're a lot more productive. So you get the CEOs, the average CEO that I work with, they go from working 16, 17, 18-hour days to 3 to 8-hour days and
Wow.
accomplishing more in a day. Because when you don't have fog that you have to walk through, when you have crystal clarity of what needs to get done, you get it done very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's powerful to gain access to the part of you that's infinite, to the part of you has immense power, that is truly unlimited. We hear these words and we're like, yeah. But it's the truth of who we are.
Incredible. I love it. And I love what you're doing. This has been an awesome conversation. So I recommend anybody who's checking this out right now, listening or watching, you can go to thinkvirtues.com. But also I'm going to put in the chat and also in the show notes after this episode, the link for the Power of Authenticity Intensive. So you can go check that out for yourself. Kathy, thank you for all of the work that you do. Greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Rob, for this opportunity. It's been great talking to you. It's always a pleasure.